Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, okay. Sorry, I missed this part. Okay, yeah.
91.
91. Okay. Sorry, I missed that part. So again, let's talk about being kind-hearted. So we have to... 정답 내가 지금 듣다가. So here, in order to become more kind-hearted, we talk about 4 aspects with regard to love, with compassion, and so forth. So each has 4 aspects. So the first aspect of each of those 4, so taking compassion, for instance, wishing, for instance, may sentient beings, it would be wonderful if sentient beings were free from suffering. And so that's the first part. This is like this, how wonderful it would be. Secondly, it would be, may they all be free from suffering. So this wishful kind of thinking, this aspiration, may they be free from suffering. And then the third is, I myself, I will lead them to freedom from suffering. That is the third step. And the last one is, you request other beings, other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for their assistance in order to bring about the relief of suffering of sentient beings. So you have these 4 aspects in that way. So when we talk about the first 2, first, how wonderful it would be if sentient beings would be free from suffering. That's the first one. And then the second one, may they be free from suffering. So those 2 are quite similar. But then the third step, I myself shall do this. This is the special aspiration. This is called the special aspirational attitude. So here in this case, it's not, it's just the wish to actually oneself to lead sentient beings to happiness, that is to free them from suffering. And it's like in order to generate the determination to be able to do so. But now the question that we're still left with is how to bring this about. How can we lead sentient beings to a state that is free from suffering? So first we just have the determination, but then the next step would be to find out how we can actually actualize this wish. How can we lead sentient beings to this specific state? So when we talk about the Mahayana system, so here the view of the Mahayana, what needs to be added then on top of this determination to work towards others needs to be the understanding that we can become enlightened. We can become enlightened, and if we can become enlightened, we need to understand how we can benefit others in that way. So without reason, without understanding the reasonings here, it's impossible to actually gain an understanding here that it's Buddhahood, that oneself becomes a Buddha. That without that understanding, one won't be able to actually generate that determination. So in that sense, therefore, one understands myself can become a Buddha, I will become a Buddha, I can become a Buddha, and then I can benefit sentient beings in a specific way. So this kind of mind that wants to benefit others is kind of an ultimate type of mind. It's the kind of the highest type of mind. This is really bodhicitta, wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, but understanding why it is necessary to become a Buddha, what we can do when we become a Buddha, and so forth. So this is described as a mind that wants to benefit others, that is endowed with the assistance of intelligence, or the assistant factor of wisdom. So it's a mind that wants to benefit others, assisted by wisdom, assisted by intelligence. Why? Because it arises from the understanding that we can become a Buddha, and the qualities that a Buddha has, and it also helps us to understand how we can then benefit other sentient beings. So previously, the third of those 4 steps mentioned before, which is the special altruistic attitude, or aspirational altruistic attitude, I myself will lead sentient beings, or I myself will free sentient beings from suffering, although this is also a mind that is based on reasoning. But here we're talking about this kind of ultimate type of mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, again, assisted by wisdom, by intelligence. So in general, when we say bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, so what is known this mind to refer to, it's usually well known that it refers to a mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So in some texts, in some scriptures, for instance, in the commentary commentary clarifying of clarification by Haribhadra. So in that text, for instance, it says that if I become a Buddha, then I can benefit sentient beings. So you find that kind of phrase: once I'm a Buddha, then I can benefit sentient beings. So here it seems like that this kind of this benefiting other sentient beings. Here you need to have a benefit. You need to have a plan, basically. So something planned in the sense that how to actually benefit sentient beings. So it's something that comes along with this special plan, basically.
所以这样子的一颗利他的心是带着计划的利益他人的心。
So in that way, this mind that wishes, so compassion here, the mind that wishes to free sentient beings, to liberate or free sentient beings from suffering, there are also different levels here, or different types. In the sense, you have a contrived, one that doesn't arrive spontaneously type of compassion, and you have uncontrived compassion, which is the type of compassion that arises spontaneously. So, in order for compassion to arise in the proper kind of way, this uncontrived, so 2 conditions need to be fulfilled. So first of all, one condition you need in order for compassion to rise is see sentient being as appealing, as something lovable. So in order for us to have love and have a feeling of closeness, we need to see them as appealing, endearing. And then secondly, what is needed is understand the different types of suffering that they experience. So understand that this different types of sufferings and how they suffer, how they suffer from those different problems. Why? So why do we need the first condition? Why is that necessary in order to generate compassion, that is the wish for others to be free from suffering? It is important to see other sentient beings as appealing or endearing. Why? Because otherwise, even though we perceive their suffering, we understand that they have problems, that they have all sorts of difficulties, etc. But nonetheless, there won't be the wish for them to be free from those types of sufferings. We will just we will not care about these problems that they experience. And if in particular there's someone we do not like, well, we may even like, or we may not care at all and be satisfied with them suffering and wish them actually to be unhappy. So therefore, it's important to understand that unless we like someone, we do not want them to be free from suffering. And here the degree or the strength of how much we like them also determines how strongly we wish them to be free from suffering or not. So it's therefore also important in the sense that if we don't like them as much, the wish for them to be free from suffering will not be as strong as opposed to if our liking is stronger, if we like them a lot, then our wish for them to be free from the different types of sufferings will be stronger. So from that kind of basic situation, being aware of that explains why it's important that we find sentient beings appealing or endearing. So how do we generate a sense of sentient beings being appealing or endearing? Well, there one way is to think that sentient beings are the same as ourselves. They're just like us. So that is one method to consider that fact. Secondly, another way to generate a sense that sentient beings are endearing is to understand how they benefit us, how they assist us, how they are of benefit to us. So those are the two ways in which we can generate that sense of appealing or a sense of endearment. So how can we then also generate an understanding of their problems, of their difficulties? Well, first we need to understand all the trouble, all the difficulties and problems that they undergo. So to think about this in great detail, to get a detailed sense of their problems, their misery, and so forth. And then thereafter think, well, what would it be like if I myself were to experience those problems, those difficulties? So really get a sense of what would it be like if I had those problems, if I were to suffer from those difficulties. And once you have an experience yourself, you get a sense of what it would feel like, what it would be like if I had these problems that they experience, then this feeling that has been generated in your continuum then enables you to get a sense, well, this is what other sentient beings also experience. So it's therefore through your own experience that you're then able to understand that other sentient beings have those difficulties. So, for instance, think of a person who doesn't have eyes, like someone who's blind. If they don't have blind, so you hear the sounds around you, but you're unable to see. So think what that would be like for you. What would it be like for you if you were in such a situation? What kind of feeling would it bring up in your mind having that kind of impairment? So really try to get an experience, a sense for what that would be like. So what about food? How they're going to feed themselves? How they're going to get food if they're blind? So let's say they have a sponsor, they may have a sponsor who sponsors them, but again, how do they get food and drink? How are they going to, get all the things that they need, and how do they actually then eat and drink them? So of course, with some familiarity, they're able to kind of get accustomed to the impairment, and therefore be able to get food, to get drink, whatever is needed, so they'll be able to look after themselves with some habituation. So let's assume they have an assistant, someone who helps them to give them good food, who assists them really well. Let's assume they had that fortune. But think like you have someone who gives you all this food and all the drink that you need, but they put you into a dark room with no windows, no doors, and you're inside this dark room for 1 month. Although you get all the food and the drink you need, but you're all the time in darkness, what would that feel like? How would you feel if you were in that situation? For instance, sometimes you have a power cut at night, you have a power cut, and you sit there without light. You're not happy. We're not happy then, are we? So in general, when we don't have any work, how do we feel? We feel unhappy if there's no electricity, but it's even worse when we have to do some work. We have to read some books, we have to read some text, we have some work to do that involves reading, and we need light. So how unhappy do we feel at that time? So usually when we're in a place that is light, that is lit, so we have some self-confidence, we feel comfortable, etc. But the moment it's a little dark, we know we don't feel comfortable. There's like some uneasiness that is generated in our mind. So think what it's like when you're always in that kind of darkness. How uneasy would one feel if one was always in that kind of dark state?
周围如果发生危险，你不知道。如果你真的知道，因为什么都看不见，你也完全无计可施，就会很紧张。
So if one thinks like, if I were in that situation, with this person, if I had that situation, that's what it feels like. And it's the same for that person who is suffering from that impairment. So slowly, if you really imagine what it feels like, then slowly you get an experience, you have a sense yourself. what it is like, and you really understand what the other person undergoes, what they're going through. And if you meditate, if you were to meditate, but it doesn't really, you try to meditate and you can't really imagine, you can't really visualize, you can't really think of what it feels like, well then just wear a blindfold for a few days. Get a sense of what it's like to be blind by wearing a blindfold for a few days. And then you really get a sense of what it's like to be in that darkness. So then at that time it may just fall off, the kind of blindfold may fall off or something, and you may lose it and then still be able to see something. That's possible. So then when we say all sentient beings, all sentient beings, so when we say all sentient beings, we're talking about sentient beings who are neutral to us, who are close to, who are our enemies. So those who are, we feel indifferent towards, those who are like our enemies, who we do not like, all those are part of all sentient beings. So we should consider all of them. So with regard to So when we think of all sentient beings, so all sentient beings here, so there's those who consider their own religion to be more important and would do anything for their own religion. They would even give up their own relatives. They would give up their own family and so forth. So if you think that you even have to generate compassion for those sentient beings, so how difficult it is to actually generate compassion for them. So when we here talk about compassion, wishing for sentient beings to be free from suffering, we're talking about all types of suffering, not just the coarser types of suffering. So here the Buddha talked about the truth of suffering, which also entails pervasive conditioned suffering. So also this type of suffering here needs to be considered. So to wish for sentient beings to be also free from the three types, and of those three types of suffering, being free of the conditioned pervasive suffering. So then for that we need to study, we need to learn about this. But just learning is not sufficient. Of course we need to also meditate on it, familiarize ourselves, meditate on that. So then, once we have compassion, then the next step is, in order to generate bodhicitta, in order to generate the wish that wants to become enlightened for sentient beings, or for all sentient beings, what does it mean to be enlightened? What does it mean to be a Buddha? So understanding that Buddhahood is possible, that I myself can become a Buddha, and how I can benefit sentient beings, how I can benefit sentient beings once I have attained the enlightened state of a Buddha. So all this needs to be understood then. So therefore, when generating bodhicitta here, in order to generate bodhicitta, we need to do a lot of study. We need to do a lot of meditation, and need to really familiarize ourselves with those. So just a short time will not suffice. So His Holiness, what His Holiness always says is that no matter what kind of religion you follow, whether you follow a religion or not, it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter what your religion is, whether you follow one or not. It is important for everyone. For everyone, it's important to generate love and compassion directed towards others. So if you follow the Dharma, if you follow the Buddha Dharma, you're someone who accepts the Buddha Dharma, practices the Buddha Dharma. So as a practitioner, you make a lot of effort to generate merit, to accumulate merit, as well as purifying non-virtues. So a lot of different practices one engages in order to accumulate merit and purify negativities. But actually, if we just meditate on bodhicitta, as His Holiness says, then this practice of bodhicitta will enable us to accumulate merit and purify non-virtues. And so, from the Mahayana point of view, so the main causes to become a Buddha, and the main causes are the mind that realizes emptiness and bodhicitta. So those two are the main causes for enlightenment. So this being the case, therefore, it is important, therefore, to meditate on bodhicitta, to meditate on love and compassion, on those two. So it becomes extremely necessary throughout our lives to practice those until our death, and to practice those even while we're dying, and to practice them even after our death, while we're in the intermediate state, while we're in the pardon. Well, that's really true. So His Holiness says that. Do we really need to do that? How is it? She probably says this to people who don't know how to practice well. But today, His Holiness says that His Holiness said today that his main practice is bodhicitta, love, the mind realizing emptiness. His Holiness was quite clear about them that this is his main practice today. So His Holiness said he practices this himself, so it's probably not the case that he keeps a secret from us and the actual practice we should be doing is something else, but he tells us we should be doing this just out of spite or out of not wanting to tell us what is really important. So that's definitely not the case. So I'm saying it's definitely the case that His Holiness taught us to do or tells us that what he's doing is really what is the most important. So actually, His Holiness says, like in the context of not practicing any religion, one should do the practice of love and compassion. So, but actually, there's so many other different things one could do that are non-religious. One could go for a walk. One could do, enjoy oneself. So why should one, as part of non-Buddhist or as non-religious practice love and compassion? Maybe His Holiness doesn't know how else to engage in non-religious practice, except for practicing love and compassion. So there's so many different ways to accumulate merit and to purify negativity. You could do prostrations, you could do circumambulations, you could make mandala offerings, or recite the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra. So there's so many different ways of accumulating merit and and purifying negative karma. So why meditate on compassion? Maybe His Holiness doesn't really know how to accumulate merit and purify negativity. So actually, there's so many different causes that take a person to full enlightenment. So when you take the different kind of practices associated with the three main tantric deities or tantric meditational deities, so Guhya, Samaja, Heruka, and Yamantaka. So with regard to those practices, there's so many different techniques and ways in which one can quickly attain the state of a Buddha. So there are all these different causes, therefore, that could take someone to Buddhahood. Actually, in actuality. So also likewise in the Nyingma tradition, you have the great practice of Dzogchen. And then in the Kagyu tradition, or likewise also in the Gelugpa tradition, according to Panchen Losang Chökyi, so you have the Mahamudra practice. So there are all these sacred, there are all these very special kind of instructions, these special techniques. So why does His Holiness say it's compassion that should be our main practice? Maybe His Holiness doesn't really know, since there are so many other practices that one can engage in that become a cause to enlightenment, that become a cause to Buddhahood. So if he knows, then why, if he knows that, why are bodhicitta and the mind realizing wisdom, realizing the mind, the wisdom realizing emptiness, why are those two said to be the main practices? So some people actually, they make a small situation, they know the kind of main characteristic, but they make it really big, they expand on things. So maybe that's what it is, it's like just there are these main kind of characteristics, but you just expand on that. So some poets, for instance, like a small situation, they kind of blow it up and make it much bigger. So who knows, maybe that's what it is.
所以他就把这个菩提心呢讲到没有那么好，可是讲到那么好，会不会是这样子的原因呢？
So down in the monastery, in Genna's monastery, they had one teacher who any small situation he made really, really big. So one day he said he saw this snake in the field. He went through the field and there was the snake, and it was this thick, like he kind of showed like the thickness of a person, so like a person's body. He saw this thick snake. So this big, maybe not that big, maybe this big, but then the show went a little bit smaller. It couldn't be that big. Like this, definitely like this.
他说哦，对，那再小一点好了，他就再把那个脖子，就是蛇的那个范围缩小一点。
But like this, definitely, I swear to you, this, so he went even down further and even smaller, that like this, definitely.
他就又把这个范围做缩小，他说真的就这么大，我发誓三宝证明我。
So therefore, maybe Holiness is also saying, oh, bodhicitta, of course bodhicitta has some importance, but it's kind of making it more important than it is, kind of exaggerating the importance of bodhicitta. So this is maybe what Holiness is doing. He speaks about why bodhicitta is so important. They're really thinking then that's probably not the case. That's Geshe saying it's not the case. That this is what Holiness says. So when we think about it, why? Because it says very strongly, it emphasizes very strongly in the scriptures, for instance, that it's possible to become enlightened in one lifetime, just with one body and with one life. So actually Holiness kind of says, well, this is actually kind of makes it sound as if this is not possible. So this is not something very practical in the sense. He's very decisive about this, saying that this is not that practical, basically. And so the Holiness here definitely speaks about reality. He puts forth what is really the case. And Holiness speaks about what is in actuality possible. So if that's not the case, if it's not in accordance with reality, well then the Holiness must be mistaken. So then there's no need to generate love and compassion mainly. So His Holiness will not kind of say the opposite of what's the case. So His Holiness said Shanti Dewa.
根据脑到了，安尼上去他们给他有的人呢，很多切削的，他真正这个现在送营长，第一次理解，安尼这些学问的第一送差别。
So, like his Holiness cited this morning, Shantideva, he cited Shantideva this morning, so saying that that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, so for many eons that we've been talking about what is most beneficial. So the most beneficial practice is also as it's described in the translated works of the Buddha, that the most beneficial practices are those of love and compassion. So this is why Shantideva has also talked about this, that these are the most important practices, love and compassion. So it's not that His Holiness is telling us something that is not in accordance with reality, but rather that love and compassion are those main practices. They are most beneficial, as has been explained by so many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past. So likewise in the Mahayana Sutras, the Buddha speaks about it again and again, that the mind realizing emptiness and bodhicitta are the main kind of causes. So in the Mahayana, those are the main kind of causes. So otherwise, if that's not in accordance with reality, then not only His Holiness is mistaken, they're all mistaken. Maybe some people will say, if I say that, maybe some people will say, will get angry with me saying that, with kind of doubting His Holiness. Maybe some people will say, oh, I've said something really negative here. But there are many who agree with me, so there are also many, if you analyze well, so there are also many who actually agree with me. So I'm kind of direct about this. Other people just keep quiet. So we're not talking about those who do not study the Dharma. So this is different, but we're not talking to them. So if we talk about those who have some experience, who have studied the Dharma to some degree, so if we say His Holiness or the Buddha are mistaken here, well, let's think, how much do we actually practice love and compassion on a daily basis? How many hours every day? How often in a week? How often in a month? How often do we really do these practices?
你给菩提心和空正见多少时间呢？你问自己。虽然嘛，这你给些那刚才就是采用的，那刚才现在去参加这个节目大概安尼三行就是属于，那哦，那刚才采他是我们的那些的，你的国会还是谁的？那都是然后
So when we talk about those who, without connecting it to any spiritual system here, so when we have any kind of trouble, we may go out for a walk when we have a problem. In order to solve the problem, we may take a walk, we may watch a movie, go to a restaurant, etc. But then when we say compassion really helps us to solve the problem, we need to look at ourselves. We need to really look at ourselves, whether we practice this or not, and whether we actually have an experience of it helping us. So likewise, when we say we should accumulate merit, we should purify negativity. So I need to practice Dharma. When you have that strong thought, well, what do you do at that time? Do you do prostration? Do you cite a mantra? Do you make offerings? So if you say, like, after one day, like at the end of the day, saying, I've practiced the Dharma well, have you actually practiced compassion? Have you actually engaged with the practices associated with love and compassion? Did you read the scriptures associated with that? Did you meditate on that? Did you read and meditate on bodhicitta, on compassion and so forth? Did you actually do those practices? So if you have come forward to So some people, they, in order to become, in order to practice the Dharma purely and in order to become enlightened, to become a Buddha, they do practice on a daily basis. They practice 5 to 6 hours, engage in sincere practice on a daily basis. There are some people like that. So of those 5 hours, practicing for 5 hours, how long or how much time do they spend meditating on bodhicitta? So the main practices for becoming a Buddha are compassion, love, and bodhicitta. So these are the main practices. But if we practice, and of those 5 hours, I've only spent like 1 hour, the last hour, and only at the very end, I did this practice. Well, what is that?
Shena, Niwayanji, Kijikambushing, Jen, Jomara, Sem Dine, Sanjusem Yamishina, Sanjusem Yam. If you're not practicing bodhicitta on a daily basis, you should elect the vote, Shena.
Sorry. So I get more votes if you had to elect, if you had to vote on the basis of that. So then I would get more votes with regard to compassion and so forth. So either what His Holiness says is not true, or we have to see that this is really true. This is something His Holiness emphasizes for a specific reason. So this is really truly the case, that it's so important to practice love and compassion in bodhicitta. And if that is the case, well then we need to change. We need to change around and therefore make an effort and really adjust our practice according to what His Holiness says. 那么你就应该要尽你的能力试试看调整你的做法，让自己也能够朝向于法王所说的那个对的方向去做。那以上的解释，今天的启示到这边，如果有问题的话可以提出。If you have any questions, please put forth your questions. So if you either give me a piece of paper or you just come up and read your and read your questions or ask your questions up front. How does bodhicitta and how does it pertain to the 6 paramitas? So which one does it pertain to? Which one is it subsumed under of the 6 paramitas, of the 6 perfections of generosity and so forth?
그래서 전주기 센나 주전에 저기学얘기 인하고다 아니 생체 통제 등의 장주 생체 통제 대화를 근데 예상 계획에 아니 생체 통제적 어디 정규 센터들이 이 참았다가 이는 치우고 고아도 되고 있습니다.
So in general, we say bodhicitta, this is a mind that wants to protect all sentient beings, that wants to be like a savior, that is like someone who gives refuge, who provides refuge to all sentient beings. So in a way, kind of providing that protection, providing that kind of help, that kind of refuge. So understanding, therefore, we need to understand, therefore, that is what bodhicitta is, wanting to help sentient beings, wanting to protect them. So in order to answer that question, that's what we need to understand.
所以当我们讲到菩提心的时候呢，你首先必须要对菩提心有这样子的理解。
그래서 정규생들이 점령제의 정규생이 교육들과 교육인의 고화성만인데 점령제의 정규생이 차세를 그래서 정규생을 김버니진스
So when we say bodhicitta, with regard to bodhicitta here, we speak of love and compassion as of being a cause of bodhicitta. But we shouldn't just think of bodhicitta as love and compassion as mere causes of bodhicitta, but also as a part, as an integral part of bodhicitta. So this is why we speak of the two aspirations. So I will become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is kind of like this aspirational mindset. So here, therefore, wanting to become enlightened is some kind of mind of giving. It's a mind that gives, that wants to give something. So, for instance, you have the sutra requested by Hassam. So, in that sutra, in the sutra, there is the explanation that giving is a part. It's kind of like it's a part of bodhicitta. And he speaks of all the different paramitas. So, we talk about the paramita that is the perfection of giving or generosity. That is a part of bodhicitta. That is kind of goes towards the direction of bodhicitta. And then likewise when he talks about ethics, so the paramita or the perfection of ethics. Again, so this is like a part of bodhicitta. It goes in the direction of bodhicitta. So therefore previously in the sutra, so it says that giving and so forth, so the practice of giving are the superior, they are the best bodhicitta, they are the practice of morality is the best type of bodhicitta, the superior type of bodhicitta. So anyway, here what we need to understand, there, for instance, one other sutra, it says, for instance, that all phenomena pertain under bodhicitta. So actually we think of the Buddha, in order to really understand the Buddha, in order to understand, to get an understanding of a Buddha, we have a sense there's this kind of Buddha, this kind of solid or concrete kind of Buddha, but actually what we need to understand that the Buddha kind of manifests to us, manifests according to people's constitution, that is, according to their interests, their predispositions and so forth. So in that way, according to that, the Buddha manifests to us, or manifests in that way.
需要不同的状态而任运承办而成的。如果我们对于佛的色身有这样子的概念的话呢，要去理解刚才讲到这个佛经的话语会稍微容易些。
So therefore, when we practice Buddhapalita, what we do, what I said in the sutta, when we practice Buddhapalita, I give everything. I give my body, I give my wealth, I give all my pleasures. All this I give to sentient beings. So this is what the practice of Buddhapalita entails here. So giving everything to sentient beings.
사람이 자라 스스로 죄책을 기도 동생을 써서 내가 기도스에 도와주는
So with a little bit of practice, if one mind has really become more familiar with this type of practice, then if another person takes one's things, one's possession, all that will, as a reaction of that, the only reaction that one will generate in one's continuum is like, oh, they just took some things away, but there's not a sense of my things were taken away. So then, with his mind getting stronger and stronger after some time, then one will think more and more, what is the best thing that I can do to others? What is the best kind of benefit I can provide to others? So from the point of view of my body, what is the best benefit I can provide for others with regard to my body, my speech, and my mind? So in that sense, that is, the mind is basically trained or becomes trained in such a way that all one does is mainly directed for the benefit of all sentient beings, and then in the end, one goes beyond, which is the meaning of the paramita, kind of like stepping beyond, becoming a Buddha. So one goes beyond in that sense that one then becomes enlightened. So this is the kind of practice one engages in and eventually becomes enlightened. So if one gives everything up, so the Buddha has said that if you give everything up, you will come to know everything. So that should suffice. Which of the 6 paramitas is the most, so he's saying the most important, so usually he thinks that the most important of the 6 paramitas is the paramita of diligence, the fourth paramita of diligence. His question is, what is the most important of the 6 paramitas? Which one is the most important practice of the 6 perfections, or which is the most important perfection? So it just depends on the circumstances here, which one is most important. So it depends on the occasion here. So it just depends on the person, basically. It's dependent on, or it's relative to the person. So it's said like a person who has laziness, who is lazy, will not be able to obtain any quality. So as it is said in that way, a person who suffers from this particular fault of being lazy and so not being able to generate qualities, then diligence becomes most important. So in this text by Nagarjuna, for instance, Nagarjuna has, for instance, said that on some occasion, or sometimes he says that wisdom is most important, and the other practices are just the branches. But on a different occasion, he's also talked about bodhicitta being the kind of main practice, and the remaining practices being merely the branches. So Nagarjuna has said different things at different times or on different occasions.
菩提智慧最重要，一个是说菩提心最重要。对功能的在那三阶级，他上阶级最多研究的，那三阶级过了，他那个他来的嘛的持护，这个这些内容的持护的，农村阶级最出名的最多的，那写了差个，现在第一下呢，持护特别给这些东西写了多些，其他的就一点我写的几个。
So when we talk about here, the basis here, so basically when we talk about the main cause, what is the main cause of enlightenment? Well, when we speak of the Dharmakaya, for instance, the Dharmakaya, in order for the Dharmakaya to come about, in order for the Dharmakaya to be generated, the main cause is wisdom. So here, therefore, from the point of view of the production or the achievement or of generating the Dharmakaya, it is wisdom which is most important, and the other practice becomes an assistant to that. So likewise, when you talk about achieving the form body or the rupakaya of a Buddha, then again, love, compassion, and bodhicitta, so those are the main causes. They're the main causes in this case that give rise to the rupakaya, the form body of a Buddha. So they're the unique kind of practice. In that sense here, therefore, they are the main practices, love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So these are like two people, for instance. If there's some work needs to be accomplished here, let's say you have two people, one represents wisdom and one represents bodhicitta, and both people need to work in union to achieve a particular goal. But there are also some other employees who are also part of the process of accomplishing this work. So I think there are some other employees too who are also important. Their work is also important. So this other person is like the effort, like the diligence. It does not allow the other two people who stand for wisdom and bodhicitta to be lazy. So he kind of encourages them. He kind of inspires them. He keeps poking them. Come on, work, and so forth. So he kind of provides the conditions for those two to work hard. That's diligence. So that should suffice. So she's asking whether usually it's said that of the 6 perfections, the perfection of wisdom is most important. That unless one engages in the perfection of wisdom, one will merely accumulate merit, but one will not be able to go beyond. So one will not reach one's goal. Is that really true? So actually what it says in the Mahayana Sutras is that it's not easy to understand what a Buddha actually entails, what it means for someone to be a Buddha. A Buddha has so many expansive qualities and so many qualities. So there's so many numerous qualities, which is why it's not easy to understand a Buddha. So therefore, if the result is so manifold, it's so extensive and so expansive, then you need to also have numerous causes and conditions, very expansive causes and conditions that give rise to such a manifold result. So if we therefore say, oh, this practice is the most important practice, this is the most precious practice, just take one practice and take that as considering that as the most important, the most precious one, then we don't really understand the working of cause and effect. We don't really understand the necessity for these manifold causes and conditions. So therefore, these different types of practices that serve as a cause for enlightenment, they can be condensed into either the 10 perfections, or if you want to condense it even further, it's the 6 perfections. So yes, also when we talk about generosity, for instance, so there's so many different types of generosity, in the sense that all practices can be subsumed or can pertain to the practice of generosity by giving the Dharma, for instance, by teaching the mundane and the super mundane. So teaching emptiness here would be the super mundane. One teaches the super mundane kind of Dharma, as well as mundane Dharma. One could teach that. So giving of Dharma, giving of material things, giving of possessions, etc. Providing protection, for instance, providing protection from being bullied, from being humiliated, and so forth. So there are all these vast practices, numerous practices. So in that sense, all the practices can be subsumed under generosity. So therefore, a Bodhisattva who wants to become a Buddha, he could do various things. In order to become a Buddha, he can work as a teacher, he can be a social worker, he can study the Dharma, he can meditate on compassion and so forth. So there's so many, meditate on patience and so forth. So there's so many different practices that this person can engage in that become a cause for this Bodhisattva to become fully enlightened. However, if they are not conjoined with bodhicitta, if all these practices are not conjoined with bodhicitta, they're not that which takes the person beyond. They're not that which takes the person to enlightenment. So they have to be conjoined, that is influenced by bodhicitta. So it's been explained that if these practices, if whatever the Bodhisattva says, if it's giving, for instance, if that's conjoined with bodhicitta, it becomes the practice of the perfection of giving. If morality is conjoined with bodhicitta, it becomes the practice of the perfection of morality, whether it's diligence or patience. So it's all the same if it's conjoined with bodhicitta. Likewise, if these practices are not conjoined, if they're conjoined with the mind that perceives true existence, again, they do not become a practice of the perfection. So it's not a practice of the paramitas in the sense that if you practice generosity or patience and so forth without an understanding of emptiness, instead you grasp that inherent existence, it does not become that perfection. So this is what it explains in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. But Chandrakirti, he differentiates here. He talks about mundane perfection, practice of the perfections, and the supramundane practice of the perfections. So if one's practices are conjoined with the mind realizing, or with the mind understanding emptiness, or with this with the sense of emptiness, then it becomes supramundane. If it's not conjoined with that, then it's a mundane practice of the paramita. So if one does not conjoin one's practices with the wisdom realizing emptiness, or with this other practice, so then with the certain other practices, then one's practice will not become a Mahayana practice. So therefore, bodhisattvas with the attitude of wishing to benefit others, when they give to others, when they, for instance, a person who's poor, a beggar, and so forth, so out of compassion, they give to this person, they make an offering to this person. In the back of their mind, they have the intention to protect all other sentient beings. So they're doing this in order to be of benefit to all sentient beings. They don't just focus on that person exclusively, but instead in the back of their mind, I'm doing this to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is why I practice generosity. So therefore, for a person, bodhisattvas may have that strong kind of attitude. So what they assert in that moment is that their goal is to be of benefit to all sentient beings, becoming a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's why they engage in the practice of the 6 paramitas, and they believe, they have the sense that this person who now who appears as a beggar is someone who's come to help them. Is someone who's come to help them to accomplish their goal of giving them the opportunity to practice generosity in order for them then eventually to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is the kind of attitude that bodhisattvas have with regard to encountering a beggar, for instance. But it's very different to us, so this is very different to our own attitude. So for us, we revere, for instance, we worship a meditational deity, kind of respect them and so forth in order to receive their protection. So this is our intention as ordinary beings, this is how we practice. So some of those yidam, some of those meditational deities manifest with a peaceful aspect and some in a wrathful aspect. So actually, Bodhisattvas feel that I achieve enlightenment through sentient beings. So they just receive assistance from these meditational deities. So it's basically, they feel like these meditational deities help them to accomplish their goal of benefiting sentient beings. So they say that of those, the beggars and enemies, they're even more precious, they're even more valuable than these meditational deities. So encountering beggars and enemies is more valuable than these deities. So these beggars and enemies, so therefore they're like the wrathful type of yidam, for meditational deities, whereas one's friends and one's relatives, they're like the peaceful types of meditational deities, so they become like So then those ghosts and enemies and so forth, they're like Yamantaka, they're like these wrathful deities that manifest in a wrathful way. So they see them as these kind of meditational deities. So these beings, when they're familiar with this way of thinking, then they're very happy, they're always happy, because they're always feeling they're receiving assistance from the Buddhas, from these meditational deities, whether they manifest in peaceful forms and wrathful forms, but there's a sense they always receive assistance from the Buddha. So in that sense, they're always happy, they're always content.
都是来给予他成就悉地的本尊，那佛当然更不用说了，所以他的心里面会无时无刻的都非常快乐。
So the Buddha says, Nagarjuna himself has said that these sentient beings are like a wish-fulfilling jewel. So as you will find in stories, like the importance of a wish-fulfilling jewel. So likewise, sentient beings are like that. So they're like wish-fulfilling jewels, they're like a treasure vase, they're like jewels. So anything that brings one kind of wealth. So these examples are used that would bring one wealth. So sentient beings are like that. They're like this source of wealth, basically, that are similar to these jewels, etc. So therefore, he says, therefore we should consider them, we should depend on them the way we depend on meditational deities and the Lama. So we should consider them in the same way as we consider meditational deities and our gurus. So unless we have some faith in the Buddha Dharma here, unless we have some faith in the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, it's a little difficult to understand this, to really get an understanding of what Geshe has said. So this is if one has a sense, if one gets the understanding of the law of karma, then it is said that if one, for instance, insults oneself, if one insults oneself and one is patient, so as a result of the insult, of the verbal insult, if one practices patience in that moment, it is said that this becomes the karmic cause of generating the celestial clairvoyance of the ear, of hearing. So the celestial clairvoyance associated with hearing. So in the next life, in a future life, we would therefore generate that kind of quality, that kind of clairvoyance. So it's like a meditation of deity, therefore, who helps one to generate certain qualities in the future. So in that sense, this is the kind of attitude here that one considers this insult as the person who gives the insult, considering that person as a kind of meditation of deity who provides one with the opportunity to generate these special qualities. And also in the scriptures it says, it is explained that if in that moment, if at the time of insult one is able to practice patience, then non-virtue that has been accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years can be purified. So this is what is explained in the scriptures. So here, therefore, when someone says you're a jerk, you're like a beggar, you're this horrible person, so this is like a wrathful deity. It's the same as like a wrathful meditation of deity. If one can really think along those lines, one should be saying, wait a minute, I want to offer you a mandala. So when a person comes to insult oneself, one should take the time and offer a mandala first. Make a mandala offering. So first, after the mandala offering has been given, now you can start insulting me, you can start talking. So if then the person, you get insulted for 15 minutes, half an hour, and once the person is done insulting you, you dedicate, you do the dedication. So, for instance, before in Tibet, in Kham caste struggle, the cultural revolution, as part of the cultural revolution in the 60s, in the 1960s, so as part of the cultural revolution, the class struggle, the Chinese government forced disciples to abuse their teachers, to hit their teachers. So at that time, as part of this kind of movement at the time, so in one place, a Lama, he was brought in the center of many people. He had to wear like a hat. His hands were handcuffed behind his back, and he was being abused. So the general population had to abuse him. So after all this abuse, then 20 years later, things had changed around. So the Lama again became like a Lama, and things became much easier. And at that time, he gained more respect, and again people would go and see him and revere and worship this Lama. So similar to what it's like today. So at that time, those people who 20 years later went to see the Lama, they felt uneasy around the Lama because they had been abusing him. They had been very abusive during the time of the Cultural Revolution. So they thought the Lama would probably not like them. So they felt guilty. They had regret, and they felt uneasy when approaching the Lama, when coming to see the Lama. So some people have talked about this, have explained this situation, that this to the Lama and told the Lama. So during a teaching the Lama gave, he said, he had been told about this, and the Lama during a teaching said, you do not need to worry about that I hold this against you. I don't have a single bit of dislike for those of you who engaged in those actions.
예다당 참진이 이렇게 타부지가 아니 제가 티그레 나중에 쇼베는 전부 생각 좀 다 전주 센터 예시중에 전에 저거 약간 좀 담대 때문이시다. 왜 시네마 저게 아니 거기 지수시에 가리지도 가지고 지수 들어가 아니 자동 타워서 아니 저거를 저기 저어디를 되는 상이 주고 싶은 딱 제가 이 미팅 나돌아다 내 약속 이거 치쇼 되게 좋아요. 이 제일 지난주에 가지는 데 중간에 세상에 정도를 가보지 제가 좀 줍니다.
So why? The reason being that at that time, during this class struggle, as it was called, this class struggle, at that time, the Lama described when he was about to be led to be abused. Before that, in the morning, so he was aware of what was going to happen. So in the morning, he very strongly generated bodhicitta in his continuum. So may whatever happen to me today become the cause for me to become enlightened. So with this very strong determination, with this very strong kind of aspiration that he generated in his continuum, he was then able, when the actual abuse, when he actually underwent the actual abuse, he was able to practice. Patience with the abusers and keep his patience, keep his love, and so forth. And when the abuse was over, he dedicated. So whatever virtue I've accumulated, may this become the cause to become fully enlightened, and so forth. So he accumulated all the virtue towards his full enlightenment. So therefore the Lama said, this was the best time for me in my life. This has been the best time for me to practice, to transform this into a cause to become fully enlightened. So you've been very kind to me. You've been very kind to me. And so also what Geshe said, he cited exactly those words. So at the end of this abuse, he said, I dedicate all these roots virtue with the dedication praise was the best by the victorious one, then that's gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva deeds. So therefore he said, I don't hold any kind of resentment towards you because you've been so kind and you've helped me to make this a cause to become enlightened. So if you have this wish to benefit all sentient beings, if you want to protect all sentient beings, if you want to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, you want to become enlightened so you can benefit all sentient beings. If you have that intention with this aspiration in your mind, then even if you learn the Tibetan alphabet, Ka, Ka, Ga, and so forth, so just learning the alphabet from scratch, this becomes a practice of perfection. This becomes one of the practices towards enlightenment. So likewise for those lamas, geshes who really do this practice, who really have the aspiration to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So when they, at some point, in order to benefit other sentient beings in other countries, or in other countries throughout the world, when they study A, B, C, it becomes a practice to become a Buddha. So this learning of the alphabet becomes a practice, becomes a cause to their enlightenment. But I cannot make this a practice to my own enlightenment because my memory is not very good, so I didn't get to study ABC in that way. So my answer was too long. Another question. So without the seven limbs, without the 7 limbs and the 6 trainings, so then is bodhicitta, just bodhicitta in itself, is that sufficient? Would that be enough? So that's the question.
난 강보지 땅마스요. 아니 제대로 지하고 제가 이는 지금 저기 셈으로 딱하고 남아 가르치는 딱 주의 셈. 그다음에 이제 대시고나 얘는 그때 그걸 땅마스요. 센테스 뉴스로 제가 대시기 전에 저기 좀 얘기 치고 하는 거다.
So here, first to give an example here, something that illustrates the necessity of the 7 limbs here. So for instance, when you invite, let's say, a king, or you invite a lama, so what you do before you invite the lama, as a preparation, you invite, you clean the room, you prepare the room, you clean yourself, you clean the room. So likewise with bodhicitta, before you generate bodhicitta, you first purify the negativities, you purify non-virtues you've accumulated in the past. And also, in order to generate bodhicitta, it is said that you need to accumulate merit and you need to purify negativities accumulated in the past. So in that way, it's like a preparation to generating bodhicitta, therefore, to doing the 7 limbs practice. So there's also a story of one time a meditator from far away came to see Jo Atisha. He came to see Atisha. So this Mahasiddha, when he came to see him, so at that time Atisha kind of lived down like at a kind of field, and so one of the disciples of Atisha went to see the Mahasiddha, went to see this great practitioner, this Mahasiddha. So the disciple of Atisha, he asked the Mahasiddha, please give me a teaching, give me a teaching that takes me quickly to enlightenment. Tell me what I can do to quickly become enlightened. He said, meditate on bodhicitta. He didn't believe that. So the Mahasiddha had like a mirror. He held a mirror. He had a mirror. So through the samadhi, through his special meditative powers, the Mahasiddha, he held up the mirror to this disciple, and this disciple says he doesn't really remember the sequence of the events, but basically Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, appeared in the mirror to the disciple. So Chenrezig told him, in order to become quickly enlightened, meditate on bodhicitta. He didn't believe. Again, then Tara appeared in the mirror, and Tara said, what you need to do is meditate on bodhicitta. And again, he didn't believe it. So in the end, 6 different times, he was told over and over he should meditate on bodhicitta, but he didn't believe. He didn't generate any belief in that. In the end, many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas came together and kind of appeared in the space in front of him, and in like a choir they would say, meditate on bodhicitta. And then slowly he thought, oh, probably I should meditate on bodhicitta. So this, the disciple actually, he gave an account to Atisha, telling him that, telling him about what had happened. So Atisha, in response, Atisha said, in order to understand the pure Dharma, one needs to accumulate a lot of merit. In order to generate faith, in order to understand the pure Dharma, one needs to accumulate merit.
다 단단히 매일 내가 또 군노 야구 거래라는 군노들이 너무 지고 이들이 다 다들 당고 고수에 있다는 가수를 다 취해 되는 게 있나 아니 자체 저거 그 되게 좋아하는 고수는 아직 이제
So Lama Tsongkhapa also says that, of course, once we have bodhicitta, it is different. So once we have bodhicitta, things are different. But initially, we do not have bodhicitta, and at that time, then first we need to have the right kind of, the appropriate kind of motivation. But that is not there. We usually don't have the appropriate kind of motivation. So this is why initially, what we initially need to do in order to practice the Dharma, if we want to practice the Dharma, we should do practices such as prostrations, engage in practices of doing prostrations, of doing making offerings and so forth, and slowly our motivation, etc., will develop. So Lama Tsongkhapa, for instance, in order to realize emptiness, he did the practice of the 3 heaps of purification, that is the 35 Buddhas. Based on that, he did the practice of thousands, 100,000s of prostrations. So without these trainings, these 4 trainings of purifying negativities, accumulating merit, and so forth, so no way that one will be able to generate bodhicitta and wisdom and so forth. So these need to precede this practice. So also actually then with regard to bodhicitta having been generated, so then there's some mistake in that question, because there's not the misunderstanding that these trainings, these 6 trainings, that with regard to those trainings, actually they're all included in the Mahayana practice. So everything is included in those practices, so we cannot really separate them. So it's important to understand that it's impossible to actually draw that distinction and to separate these practices, the 7 limbs, these 6 trainings and so forth. So when we, with regard to compassion here, so when we generate compassion, so right now we're not able to liberate sentient beings, we're not able to remove their suffering. On top of that, if we can help sentient beings, then only 1 or 2. So there are endless sentient beings, endless, limitless sentient beings who we at this point cannot benefit. So this is why, therefore, it's out of compassion, our wish to benefit sentient beings, that we request the Buddhas, for instance, as one of the branches, as one of the limbs, we request the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to teach the Dharma with that motivation, in order for us to be able to liberate sentient beings, to take them to enlightenment. So likewise, thinking like with rejoicing, when engaging in the practice of rejoicing here, so you Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have done these great practices, so I sincerely, I rejoice in these practices, and I will likewise engage in the same kind of practices and rejoice in that. So this becomes a practice of love and compassion. So, for instance, of the different limbs, prostration is one. To do prostrations is one limb, and this is seen as a remedy to arrogance. So actually, when we say doing prostrations here, so prostrating towards the Buddha or prostrating towards His Holiness, that is not really benefiting, what is not really beneficial in the sense of removing one's arrogance. However, when one prostrates towards a person who's lower, who's more inferior than oneself, that really becomes an antidote to one's arrogance. So, but first, this is not something that we can really understand, that really goes into our mind, like understanding. So this is why the Buddha kind of gradually, these teachings are given gradually, in the sense, first during prostration it's directed at Buddhas, then Aryas and Sangha. And then you do prostration towards those monastics, whether they're pure monastics or not. So the next step would then to prostrate, to do prostrations towards the monastics. And then understanding that all sentient beings have Buddha nature, then eventually one prostrates towards all sentient beings. So this is then the next level of one's practice as an antidote to arrogance. So that should suffice. One more question.
Come up.
Please come forward. So the question is with regard to the three characteristics that determine whether a phenomenon is conventionally existent. So of conventional existence, so there are three characteristics. So of conventional existence, so phenomena existing conventionally, they have to have three characteristics. So of those three characteristics, what would be the fault of the first characteristic not being fulfilled? This is the first question, and the second question is which kind of teachings, which sutric teachings or which treatises are a source for these three characteristics. So Lama Tsongkhapa, he was the one who enumerated those three characteristics, who specified for a phenomenon to exist conventionally, those three characteristics must be fulfilled. So this explanation is unique to Lama Tsongkhapa. It was not given before Lama Tsongkhapa. So this made it very clear in that sense, in the sense that by kind of spelling it out in that way, it became very clear. So this becomes also a source, therefore, a way to understand the difference between phenomena not existing inherently and not existing at all, versus phenomena existing inherently and existing. So to get an understanding of those. So, for instance, in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, so the Buddha says phenomena do not exist inherently, not existing inherently, this and that. So, in response to the Buddha teaching that, Ananda or Mongkalipu, one of those disciples, who said, "Are you saying with this that there's no karma, that there is no non-virtue, etc.? Is that the meaning?" So, in response to the Buddha's teaching, they asked the Buddha whether that's the meaning. So the Buddha asked again, well, is that what you think it means? Do you think it means there is no karma, etc.? But in response, then the Buddha's disciples said, well, I don't actually believe that. I believe what you're saying, I understand that, but I think that in the future this could be misunderstood. in the future there could be disciples who think that not existing inherently means that phenomena do not exist at all. So out of concern for that, this doubt possibly arising, I'm asking you here. So therefore in response then the Buddha said, well, if phenomena existed inherently, there wouldn't be no Buddha, no Dharma, no Sangha. Whereas on the other hand, if phenomena lack inherent existence, if they do not exist inherently, well then it's possible for these phenomena, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha and so forth, then these phenomena can actually exist. So then again, someone asked the question, on one hand you say that all phenomena are equal. On the other hand, you talk about Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, virtue, non-virtue. So you discern, you discriminate between these different phenomena. You draw that distinction between different phenomena. And so in response to that, the Buddha then said that phenomena are just like a dream or like dream objects. So for those who have not studied Uma, this is a little difficult to understand, but those who have studied, well, Chandrakirti says, when Chandrakirti says that phenomena, when he presents the reasoning that phenomena do not exist truly, well then the philosophers of the lower philosophical system, they say, well, we can see phenomena directly, we have a direct perception of phenomena, so why do we have to apply reasoning? Why do we need reasoning to establish phenomena if we can actually perceive them directly? So because it was not possible to right away confer the right kind of understanding on these people, these philosophers, therefore the Buddha then responded by giving the teachings of the Four Noble Truths of phenomena that are real conventional truth, unreal conventional truth, and so forth, or that which is right and that which is wrong, so in that way. Nothing. So here, this is from the point of view of phenomena being real or unreal from the perspective of the mind of a worldly person. So when we talk about this, so something that is real from the perspective of an ordinary person, existent and non-existent and so forth, so there are four possibilities with regard to that which is real from the perspective of an ordinary person's perception and that which is existent, etc. So these four possibilities, and therefore these three characteristics are subsumed under this. This is a secret explanation that for those who study the scriptures understand.
这个以下刚才讲这段话是针对于有读过中观同学的秘密教研。
There was another person who had a question, so someone raised their hand, so you can ask.
と電柱空でからです。
電柱が空である。空から。So Geshe already said that he speaks about this already, that Lama Tsongkhapa formulated those three. He was the first to formulate those three in this unique way. So when Holiness says, Holiness usually says that we should study philosophy, we should study debate and so forth. So this is something difficult. So what can we do? So this the person who asked this question must be someone who studied philosophy and debate and found this difficult.
但是因为你已经开始学经论了，你觉得很困难，所以你才提出这个问题吧。
So first of all, studying philosophy and debate, we need to understand what is the benefit of doing so. What are the benefits of studying debate and philosophy and debating? If it's not beneficial, then, well, we don't need to necessarily do it. So then, if it's difficult, just leave it. Don't do it if it's not beneficial. If it is, then we need to check the degree of benefit here. So if there's only a small benefit, then we can make a small effort. If there's a middling benefit, we should apply a middling effort. But if there's great benefit, then even if it's difficult, we should make a great effort and then to engage in the study of philosophy and debate.
如果学经论的好处是极大，就算困难极大，你也应该要继续努力。
So you don't need to answer here, but you still ask. You should still. If you would like to ask this question, how many years have you studied philosophy and debate? How many hours every day did you work? How many hours every day did you study? So when you think, having gone to school, how long did you go to school to get an education? So in order to have the education that you have now, like having the degree of education that you received while going to school, how hard did you have to work? How many years did you have to go to school in order to get that degree of quality? Wasn't that difficult? Didn't you work hard then? So you can apply the same reasoning with regard to your kind of worldly education, you can apply here for the study of philosophy and debate. So actually, Geshe is saying he doesn't know with regard to the person who asked this particular question here, but he said he's encountered some people who went through a worldly kind of a secular education for 15 to 20 years, working very hard, studying very hard, and then thereafter, when they encountered the Dharma, they studied for 3 or 4 years and they're saying, oh, the Dharma is so hard, it's so difficult, I work so hard, I don't understand the Dharma. So actually this kind of the sense of defeatism, oh this is difficult, I can't do this is actually a type of laziness. So in order to overcome that kind of laziness, you should read the sutras, you should read the diligence chapter of the Bodhisattva's way of life, or the chapter on diligence of the Lamrim Chamo. So in order to generate diligence, you need to think about or contemplate the benefits of the study of philosophy and debate. So then next, if it's impossible physically or mentally to engage in this study, okay, there's nothing you can do if it's impossible to do this physically or mentally. So if it's beneficial and one is actually able to engage in these practices, if it's actually possible physically and mentally to engage in these practices, then one should actually open oneself to this possibility and get into
너 주변에 뭐 당분이 생각 지체야 돼. 너 주변에 산다가 개 좋아.
So,
내 말이다. 로마 그 장고 그때 뒤섬나는데 다 눈이 좀 제대로 다 지금 무시로 타고 되는 거. 어떻게 생각도
So it's just in the nature of our mind that it's such that when we have opened ourselves to the possibility of studying this, so in the sense of one has seen the benefits of studying philosophy and debate, and one has understood that for oneself personally, it's possibly mentally and physically to do this. So once one has understood that, there's also a sense, well, I'll study this for 40 years. If it takes 40 years, I don't care. If it takes 50 years, I don't care. I'll just do it. And with this kind of attitude, once one has studied for 10 years, it doesn't really seem very long. Whereas on the other hand, if one feels like, oh, I'll study this for 5 or 6 years, with this attitude, then even 2 years seem to be really long. So it's just the nature of our mind, that our mind adopts this kind of attitude depending on the attitude we started out with.
跟自己做的一种心理建设，一种配合你的心理状态做的思维。
实际上，在实际上这一段的热场的提醒的话，那个我们讲的，里面第三个人的提醒的话，那个当然呢，做的现在改名的这个，所以说第二年那个提醒的话，那个当时在那里，肯定马路送一张提醒的话，那个当时的去接个这个巴拉巴拉，那看那个不当然在是不是了？他那个不是。他那个不是你中间的全部主力是来报的，你咱这个的，那都这地方都需求么需求那就是报的这地方，全部经营下来，现在让他本来是这个，有那我这个全部是这个，现在就经济也不下来了。
So actually, with regard to a bodhisattva or bodhicitta training in bodhicitta, so usually you recite this prayer, I will, as long as space remains or as long as space endures, I will work for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is very difficult for our mind to really appear, to really have a sense of that in reality. So this is something Geshe says he knows from his own experience. For instance, His Holiness cites this verse all the time, again and again, as long as space endures, I will benefit sentient beings and so forth. So it helps to generate this kind of determination, this kind of sense I really need to do this, the courage to do it. But actually, if we think about as long as space endures, well, there will be space for such a long time. I mean, like infinitely there will be space. So actually, if we think I need to benefit sentient beings for 40 or 50 years, that seems like a really long time. So basically, oh my God, 40 or 50 years I need to benefit sentient beings. That shows the sense of kind of like the sense of exhaustion. We're just thinking of that period of time. Shows we don't really have a sense or a notion of what it means as long as space endures. So especially with regard to Buddhist practice here, so until I become a Buddha, I will study. I become, in order to become a Buddha, I will study. I will study for 10 or 20 years. May this become a cause for Buddhahood. Or I will spend this entire life, for one lifetime, I will learn, I will study to become a Buddha. Or next life, or my next lives in order to become, or until I become a Buddha. And then it's kind of exhaustive. So it's like, oh, that's really exhausting to feel like until. So actually the attitude we need this is the right kind of attitude, thinking that I will learn, I will gain understanding of the Dharma, and then I will meditate on what I've learned, and then this experience, the experience I have, I will utilize to help sentient beings. So that is the kind of attitude here. So with this attitude, if then I study, this is the right kind of attitude. This should be our motivation for doing this study, so in order to practice and then help others. So With this motivation, then each time we face a problem, each time there are difficulties, problems that we face as part of our study, we are able to purify a lot of non-virtue that we've accumulated in the past. So with each of these difficulties, we engage in this purification. Okay. And similarly, we accumulate merit. So Geshe says, because of his physical difficulties, so therefore he cannot study longer than 3 hours. So when he studies for more than 3 hours, he becomes sick. So with regard to his classmates, his Dharma friends, so from the point of view of their kind of educational qualities, their qualities are much greater because they have much more time to study the Dharma. They have more than 3 hours every day. They don't get sick like Geshe does. So from the point of view of his educational qualities. So if my motivation was pure in the way like the way I just described, then even though I only do 3 hours, but I will accumulate more merit and I will purify more non-virtue, even though it's less time that I spend. So kind of like I'm saying like as if I have more kind of merit and I purify more negativity, I'm kind of pretending. So that should suffice. So let's recite the Buddhapalita prayer or the Buddhapalita dedication. Rinpoche make panam kigyoche, keba nyamba mebaya, kone kondu perwa shu. Rinpoche make panam kigyoche, keba nyamba mebaya, kone kondu perwa shu. Rinpoche make panam kegyo che keba nyamba mebai kone kondu perwa